The Sean Diddy Combs federal sex crimes trial is underway. Diddy's ex-girlfriend Cassie testified to taking part in drug-fueled sex parties called freak-offs that Combs demanded she participate in. She was physically assaulted multiple times by Combs, leaving visible injuries on her body. The imprisoned music mogul provided financially for the singer. Rachel Fischer is a forensic nurse expert and sexual assault nurse examiner specializing in anti-trafficking efforts. Rachel joins us now. Thank you so much for being with us. This is complex. There is a lot of layers to this, physically, psychologically, emotionally, and you're here to help us understand exactly what the dynamics are in terms of abusers and victims, and in this case, regarding Combs and Cassie Ventura.
Yes, thanks for having me on. There's definitely a lot of layers to this, and it's complex for people to even understand trafficking in general. They see movies and they don't understand what it means. And in this context, we see it as this dynamic of a relationship, and we see that in trafficking. It's predominantly the pimp or the trafficker is the boyfriend, that Romeo-Juliet pimping style, and we see that with Diddy and Cassie, is that relationship, that bondage, that they love each other, they're in a relationship, but there's also abuse going on. And so we see the domestic violence elements, that power and control dynamic that's present. That can be present in toxic relationships and bad marriages, but it's present in trafficking situations like the one that we have here. And you have that power struggle, and then the submission, and just in what we know so far that's come out in court, you see so many elements of that, and the abuse and the fear and the intimidation. And with that human trafficking, that's where you bring commercial sex acts into the mix. So you can have toxic relationship, domestic violence, you can have forced sex or rape, but when you bring in that element of money exchange, paying escorts, bringing escorts in, being forced to be on camera, utilizing drugs, the drug use in this is significant as well. So the consent coming into play of, can you even consent if you're on drugs and alcohol? No. So the elements of force, fraud, and coercion, just seeing that prevalent so far, it's not just domestic violence and abuse like we've seen on that video. It was a video of an assault. We saw that. It's public. But it's what happens behind closed doors that person is running away from that matters. And that's what we're getting into the crux of.
So I want to take it down to the basics, because when people think of sex trafficking, they don't necessarily think of it as somebody who is in a what appears to be consensual romantic relationship with a partner. So how does sex trafficking play into the Diddy sex crimes federal trial?
So it comes into play whenever you use force, fraud, or coercion to compel the person into a commercial sex act. So buying or selling, that's the exchange of money for a commercial sex act, engaging in that. Whether you're the one paying for it or being paid, somebody else is having sexual gratification from that. And it can be labor or sex trafficking. So if you're forcing somebody to perform an act, and you're not paying them, or you're forcing them to do a commercial sex act. And this case has both labor and sex trafficking charges that they're proving out, and it can play in both aspects. Cassie had said that she paid for the escorts, right? She's the one handing the money. Who's the person that transferred the money to her to give it? So there's more than one person involved here. So we're getting into, that enterprise, the different people involved, who is booking the flights for the escorts to come. And the prostitution, I've heard them say prostitute, and I don't like that word because I work with a lot of victims of trafficking and people who are in the game, who are still in the industry, in the sex industry. And these escorts, they're on websites sometimes. So who's monitoring that website? Who is their agent? Who is the one that's sending them off or approving them? Or are they renegades, independent? There's just so many layers to that. And people are not prostitutes. They're in prostitution, or they're being prostituted and forced to do commercial sex acts. And so that element of choice goes away when somebody tells you what you need to do, how, why, and when, and how much to pay them.
Carlucci, who says he's the cousin of Sean Combs, appeared on Chris Cuomo's show, and he said that Cassie brought them in, meaning the male sex workers. You just touched upon how she may have brought them in, but who was giving the money, which we've heard and people testify that Combs was providing the cash. So can you get into that dynamic? Because for someone hearing this, they would say, well, she was the one looking through the ad. She was the one choosing the male sex worker. She was the one opening the door and handing them the money. So let's get into the nuance of how just because somebody is doing something doesn't mean they're doing it necessarily consensually or on their own accord.
So what we see in trafficking and pimping, you've got the guerrilla pimps, which are very violent, angry, the Romeo-Juliet pimping, that's that love relationship. This is a mixture of both. So there's that guerrilla pimping of violence. If you don't do this, there will be consequences, or you will go missing, as we've heard said. So there's both elements there. The victims, and Cassie is very similar in other victims that we've worked with, in that the pimp controls who you're bringing in. So recruiting other people to come in, recruiting other girls to take part in it, other men to take part in it. That's that recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
And then the transporting and harboring elements come in. But when you go online and you have to go pick, so if Pop says to do something, or Daddy or King, as many of them call their pimps, if they tell you that this is what you're going to do, it's your job as that victim to go recruit and find that individual to come in. And they refer to it as the bottom girl in many cases, the girl that's in a relationship with the pimp, who's been in for the longest. It's her job to go out and recruit. And that's the most difficult portion of the case, is that if you're the bottom girl, the one that's in charge and that the pimp is putting out there to go do the work for him, you're the one that's catching the cases. You're the one that looks bad. You're the one that looks like you just wanted it because you're following instruction under him. You're submissive, and you have no choice because you have that coercive element of control and the manipulation of what happens if I don't, that fear of what will happen, because you've seen it happen, you've experienced, you know what they're capable of. So if you don't act on that and order whoever they say to come in and pay whoever they want to do whatever they want, it's not your gratification. You're not choosing it. You're under somebody else's control. And we see that very often, a lot of times with teenagers, but adults as well. And the longer that you're in that relationship with them, the harder it is to get out. But it's your job to go and bring them in.
You talk about the physicality of control. And we know that there have been exhibits presented, images presented showing bruises, black eyes of Cassie. You mentioned something previously to me about strangulation, choking. What does that translate to? What is that message to the victim when an abuser strangles them?
We've heard the word choking used, and that's commonly misused for strangulation. Choking is an interior blockage of the air passage, and strangulation is external pressure being placed in the vessels of the neck. And one episode of strangulation can have consequences for the rest of your life, and it could be fatal. And people who are known as stranglers, who are willing to choke somebody, as we hear it in this case, they're the most lethal abusers. That's the most lethal form of domestic violence. That's cutting off the air and circulation of oxygenated blood to the brain. And it doesn't take very long to render someone unconscious. And the more that you put your hands on someone's neck, the more negative health consequences they're going to have for the rest of their life. So it's a permanent anoxic injury when you go unconscious. You lose 32,000 neurons per second. It's serious bodily injury. And someone who's willing to do that. We've done studies. It's in the stroke literature. We've done studies on people who kill officers and people who strangle. History of DV strangulation. Those are the ones who are killing our officers. Those are the ones that are doing the murder homicides. They're very lethal. And when you cut off somebody's air and you put somebody's, you take their neck, you put your hand on it and you squeeze 6.8 seconds, they can go unconscious with just 11 pounds of pressure. And then when they wake up, they may not even remember they're unconscious. They don't know how serious it is. They keep on going. You may not even see physical signs, but you know that you almost just died. So the same hands that almost killed you are the same ones that let you live. And it's that mental, that feeling of you owe them your life, right? They have the power to kill you. They've got guns. They've strangled me. I've seen what they are capable of, but they're still letting me live. They're still providing for me. They're still telling me that they love me. So it's that toxic cycle of violence that we see that's present here.
And also we know about the fear of leaving is very real, because when a victim tries to leave their abuser, the most dangerous, vulnerable point is the exit, is right after they leave.
Especially if they're being tracked, and you've heard about security guards and people working for them. And if you see how they operate, and she's watching him, she lives with him, stays with him, knows how many security guards, drivers, how many people are around.
Guns.
She knows how he runs. Yeah. And just seeing a gun, even if it's not in his hand, just knowing that he has one present. So even on some of our sexual assault exams, there's paperwork that we fill out. And one of the questions is, was there guns present? They don't even have to be holding it. It's just the fact that it's there, and that, and especially with, I mean, we all know drop guns or serial numbers being scratched off. We know what that means. Just the presence of that being there, knowing what that person's capable of. You can't just leave. They will find you, and somebody will be sent to find you. And watching that happen with others, you're not going to let that happen to yourself.
Right. And we do know that Combs, at one point after the 2016 Intercontinental Hotel assault, he did try to find Cassie at her apartment, and he was hammering down her door, according to her then best friend. So like you said, it is not easy to extrapolate yourself from those dynamics at all. I spoke with a sexual abuse attorney this week who said the sheer volume of lubricants, baby oil, sex toys, drugs, cash, even guns, were damning for the defense, because it shows that this is more than someone with a fetish who just like to engage in things that maybe the general population would consider kinky or different, that this is more than the personal use amount. Can you speak to this?
Yeah, so in the commercial sex industry, having sex one time, I mean, people can use as much baby oil lube as they want. But when there's that much volume and there's that much traffic coming in of different people coming in and out, and different preferences, and there's a lot. I mean, you look at penetration, right? I mean, the basics of anatomy. You need lubricant to be able to penetrate, or you'll cause injury. We've heard, UTIs and infections that she had to be on antibiotics for. And just that alone, being forced to have sex regardless of your health condition. We see that in trafficking all the time, that they're being forced when they're on their periods, when they have a UTI, and that's painful. If you've ever had a UTI, it's painful. An STD, having something you need antibiotics for, it hurts. And nobody's going to willingly say, oh yeah, I'm in pain, but I want to just lube it up and have a bunch of people come over and pay them for it. You don't willingly say that unless you have to. And there was testimony surrounding that. So just that. And then the drugs, people judge people for being on drugs. They're like, oh, well, she's just a drug addict and she just wanted to get high and have sex. Well, number one, you can't consent to having sex if you are under the influence. You don't know who you're saying no to, especially if they're hallucinogenics or if you're unconscious. So if you're having sex and you're intoxicated, you can't give consent. Even if you wanted to do it at first and you said yes, the moment you say no, consent stops. Whether you're married, whether it's a good relationship, a bad, the moment you say no, that consent goes away. So when you're forced to do it and there's money exchanged, here we go again to that sex trafficking.
Wow. Thank you so much for your insights and for helping us understand the intricacies of this case. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Diana Falzone. For Diddy trial updates, go to newsnationnow.com.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.